we're looking at the kanji that you need to use to write large numbers in Japanese. It's in Unit 3, our shopping workbook, and the reason is the yen is worth a very small amount. £1 is about 150 yen, so you only have to buy something very small and you're already spending 100, 200, 300 or even 1,000 or 2,000 yen. So let's start with this one over here. It's the character for 100, and we'll see the stroke order, the kakijun, and how it was made. Now this character was a combination of 1, because it's 100, and this element underneath, which starts with 1 stroke there on the top, 2 going down that side, 3 all the way across and around, just like we always do. Fill in the middle, left to right is 4, and 5 is close off that square shape. Now this bottom element is in fact a kanji in its own right. It means white, and we'll be using that later in this workbook. But here it's being used for its sound, because it sounded like hyaku. So 1, hyaku, 100, this is the character. Now we're going to have a look how to write 200. So what we're going to do is shuffle 100 down, and now we have 200, literally 2. Here's the number 2, we know that. And here's our 100, 1, and then we put the hyaku bit underneath. So there we have 200. Notice I'm writing down, and the reason I'm doing this is because actually when Japanese write across, that's the modern way of writing, and they tend to use Western numbers, not kanji numbers at all. But when they're writing down, they're writing in the traditional way, and so they do in fact use the traditional kanji to write their numbers. Let's have a look what 300 would look like. And there it is. Sang. That's the kanji for sang. And then 101. And then the 100 bit comes down here. So, sam, byaku. Now we're going to look at how to write thousands. There's the kanji for thousands. It's pronounced sen. And let's have a look at the kakijun and its origin. Now apparently in olden times a man was supposed to represent 1,000. It's just over here. Pop a kanji for a man, you know what it looks like, don't you? There it is. Now this bit here, it looks a little different, but you can still see that basically that's that man character. So you've got a man that represents 1,000, and then you've got 1 going across here to represent 1,000, and apparently in the olden days they'd put a second stroke over here to represent 2,000. They don't do that anymore. It only has 1 stroke going across, so it looks like this. Now we need to be a little careful with the stroke order, because we don't do the man bit first and then the number. We actually do the top of the person or the man, then we do the number 1, and then we put the body in down here. So it's actually ich, ni, sang. Let's look at that again. Ich, ni, sang. Now you've probably noticed this has a very strong resemblance to a certain katakana. Can you imagine which one? It's this one, of course. It's chi, ich, ni, identical. And then if we make that stroke there slightly curvy, we get the katakana chi. So don't confuse this one here with sen, or 1,000. Now just like hyaku, sen is used on its own when it means 1,000. So that kanji on its own means 1,000. But to write 2,000 you need to add the number 2. And we get ni, sen, 2,000. For 3,000, the same system. San, sen. We change the sen to zen, don't we, with 3,000, just to make it a little easier to say. San, zen, and so on. Okay, now it's time to meet the big fat man. And there he is. It's Mung, 10,000. And he looks a bit like a big fat man. Let's have a look at his stroke order. Just like the others, he starts with a 1 on top. There we go, 1, and then we've got his great big fat belly goes 2nd, and finally his back there goes 3rd. But unlike the others, you don't use this kanji on its own. For 1 10,000, in other words 10,000, you actually have to include the kanji for 1. And you get ichi mang, 1 10,000. In other words, 10,000. Now for 20,000, you would do, well, what do you think? Ni mang, 20,000. And 30,000 would be sang mang, 30,000. Let's look at what happens when we actually want to write a rather long and complicated big number. Well, first of all, we just check to see whether our number's got more than 4 digits. And we can see 1, 2, 3, 4. It's in fact got 5. Now, as soon as a Japanese number has more than 4 digits, you've got to hive off those last 4 digits. You can either do it in your mind, or better still, just draw a circle around them so they're now separated from that number that's left. So we're just going to draw a nice box around that. We know that that's going to be done separately, so we've got 9. Now, the 4 digits here are always represented by the Japanese mang. So we've got 9 mang, and that's how we're going to start with our number. So I'm going to put 9 q mang, 9 fat mang, q mang. Now we've got to add the rest. Now we can see we've got 5 thousands, haven't we? That's the same as the English system, so that's relatively easy. So we need go, and then we need sen. Do you remember that one? That's like the man with the 1 across. 1,000, so 5 of them makes 5,000. Kyuman, gosen, and then we've got to put the 400 on the end. Now we've run out of space here, so we can just go up to the top of the next row, pop our 4 in. There we go, yong, and finally hyaku. That's 1 across the top, and then white underneath for its sound, hyaku. And that gives us kyuman, gosen, yong hyaku. Now all we have to do is find out how to write yen, and we can start writing Japanese prices and talking about money. There's our kanji for en. The core meaning of the kanji is actually circle, and because the en coin is circular, then this character, meaning circle, has come to represent the currency or the yen. Of course, the Japanese don't say yen, they say en. Let's look at the kakijun. Okay, there's en. Now this one again has a kind of a square shape. So we do our usual system, down on the left, across and down on the right without taking your pen off the paper. And a little tick if you want to be fancy, but it's not necessary. Down in the middle, because you always do the middle bits of the box, and then close it off. It's not being closed off at the bottom, is it? It's closed off halfway, and that means both the currency en and also a circle. And you put that after a number to indicate how many yen it's worth. So 200 yen would be 200 en.